Very good. Welcome everybody to our doctrinal talk for the School of Leaders today. We are being now reintroduced to Jesus Christ, rediscovering Christ. According to Matthew Kelly, it's very good, very simple, down to earth. We are being reminded here that Jesus Christ is radical. He said that a number of times in the book already. Radical means, from the Latin word radix, going to the root of reality, valuing people more than things. In the previous chapter, he says we should love people and use things, but we oftentimes reverse that, don't we? We love things and use people in our world, in our fallen state. One of the consequences of original sin. I loved his challenge to examine your checkbook and look at your calendar, your planner, to see what you really value. What do you really value? And that's one way of doing that. He challenges us. That was the previous chapter, chapter 18 also. Do you have Jesus' priorities? Are we living gospel values? And the answer, he says, is yes and no. For most people, yes and no. We are, to some extent, living gospel values, but we have a long way to go in that area. Now chapter 19 is miracles abound. And he asks, if you could perform a miracle, what would it be? If you could perform one miracle, what would it be? College students, he said, would want to change water into wine. Mother with a sick child, you know what her miracle would be, to heal that sick child. And Jesus' miracles were not just to put on a spectacular display. He was not showing off. They were of service to people, his miracles were. And I quote here from Matthew Kelly, quote, "It is easy to fall into the trap of placing these miracles in a far-off place with people you never know," unquote. He makes the point that miracles can be everyday things, like his friend. That was a wonderful little story. He had this friend who had been through tough times in his life. And when he would go to social gatherings with his friend, it finally occurred to him after a long period of time, he would always wind up in the corner talking to somebody who would be the least likely person you would want to talk to at this social gathering. And it happened consistently. And he finally asked his friend about that, remember? And the friend said, well, I've been through tough times in my life, and what that induces me to do is to, in any kind of gathering, try to look for the person who is suffering the most. And that's the person I talk to. That's the person that I go to. Wow, what a great thing. You could pray, and I think I'm going to start doing this when I go to a social, either at the parish or among the priests or something like that. Say a little prayer. God, send me to the person that most needs my attention right now, or send me to the person who would, value my conversation, or send me to the person who's most lonely or most hurting in this room. What a great thing that would be. Usually we go, to parties. This is the season for Christmas parties. We go to the most popular person, or the person who's the funniest. Oh, there's Fred over there. Fred's a gas. I'm going to go talk to Fred, and there's a group around Fred, and you join in the group, and you're having a good time laughing at Fred's jokes. or the person who can do you favors, and not this guy. He was the opposite. Go to the person who's most hurting, and we can pray about that. Sometimes we go into social situations, maybe a little anxious. If you have social anxiety, or maybe there's one or two people there you don't like too much. What a game changer it would be just to pray, Lord, send me to the person that most needs to interact with me. It might be that person you don't like too much, and God can challenge us that way. So that's very important. And he says that if we would just learn to recognize people's needs and pains, there are so many prayers God wants to use us to answer. So you become a walking, talking miracle for that person in that social gathering. At the end of the evening or the end of the day, that person goes home, right? And says, wow, it was a really good experience I had with that other person. And that's just what I needed. And then you become a miracle. And that's an everyday miracle. Point to ponder, at the end of every chapter, point to ponder, etc., etc. Point to ponder. God wants to see your amazingness. Verse to live, John 14:12. The one who believes in me will also do the works that I do. In fact, will do greater works than these. Question to consider: whose prayer can I be the answer to today? Prayer. Jesus, teach me to recognize the opportunity for everyday miracles. That's chapter 19. Chapter 20, radical love. And he says, I quote, life is a course designed to teach us to love. Life is a course designed to teach us to love. I recommend a movie to you, this is not in the book, called The Game. Michael Douglas stars it. Raise your hand if you've ever seen The Game. The Game, it wasn't real, I guess it didn't really make a big splash in the box office, but it's about a game you buy into, very popular with, this is fiction, very popular with CEOs and rich people, and you buy into this game. It's not cheap, and you have to actually, you walk into the office and say, I'd like to do the game. Okay, and there's a whole day of testing, psychological testing, physical testing, and then they decide whether or not they're going to accept you into the game. At first, Michael Douglas, after all this testing, he's skeptical about this, and his brother buys him into the game. I did it, you got to do this, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. So Michael Douglas, all right, and goes through all the testing and gets rejected from the game. And he's a very rich CEO, sort of like the Gordon Gekko figure he plays in Wall Street. Same kind of guy, big, owner of a company and all that. He's incensed that he's been rejected from the game, which is part of the game. So I want in this game, I demand, so they let him in the game. And I don't want to give too much away. But you go into this game, and it's everywhere around you. They have it all arranged everywhere. You are part, and they've actually hired people to, sometimes your own family members and all that, to be part of the game. I sort of give away a little too much there. It's a little bit of a spoiler. A long story short, you enter into this game, and it becomes like a nightmare. And I want out of this game. And you can't get out of the game. And the whole thing is a paradigm of life, I believe. I think that's the point of the movie. And he actually does become a more loving person at the end. Probably gave away too much, but go see it anyway. Go see it anyway, because I think that's what it is. I think it's the whole movie is a symbol of, and the game is a symbol of life. Life is, of course, designed to teach us to love, and life can become a nightmare at times. It seems that way. He goes through the types of love: affection, friendship, romantic love, and agape. Jesus came to teach us agape love. That's the highest form of love. Also caritas. In Latin, we say charity, and it's self-sacrificial love. The other types of love, especially romantic love, are almost like commerce in a way, because you're getting something from the other person. Isn't that funny? That's the love, romantic love. Erotic love is what's really exalted by our society and the movies and all that. That's the greatest type of love. The philosophers throughout the centuries put romantic love or erotic love as one of the loves, but at the bottom of the rung of the ladder. And the other types higher, friendship higher. A lot of philosophers, Plato, Socrates, saw friendship is higher than erotic love or romantic love. And the highest is agape love. My thing is, I tell the engaged couples, really, marriage should be all of the loves together. Should be all of them. Yeah, you gotta have erotic love, but there should be. Problem with a lot of marriages today, there's no agape love, no self-sacrificial love. How can I help you? What can I do for you? So many marriages is, what are you gonna do for me? You don't make me happy anymore. But both people are saying to one another, how can I make you happy? How can I make you happy? That's a real strong marriage. Jesus came to teach agape love. It is selfless, self-sacrificial, generous, unconditional. Quote, Matthew Kelly, by contrast, the types of love that are widely proclaimed and practiced in modern society are outrageously conditional, unquote. People are in all types of relationships based on how they look and what they can do for the other person, what the other person can do for them. And people fear being banished from the relationship because they might not measure up to the partner. And that gives birth to paranoia and neuroses. God does not love you because of anything you can do for God. We really can't do anything, if you think about it, we really can't do anything for God. And parental love is a glimpse into this, he says. Most of you are parents, and you would do anything for your child, not for what the child can do for you, but simply because that child is yours. That is why parents make sacrifices for their children. And this is very inspiring. Parental love is very inspiring that way, but it fades in comparison, says Matthew Kelly, to the outrageous sacrificial love that Jesus displayed by dying on the cross for us. That was radical. John 15:13. No one has greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Jesus pouring himself out for us on the cross was the final expression of what he had been doing during his 3 years of public ministry. Now, Jesus is radical. He is a radical. Most radicals lead revolutions, Matthew Kelly says. There are political revolutions, there's economic revolutions. Usually revolutions are good for some, bad for others. Bolshevik revolution was very bad for the Tsar and his family. They all got executed. But Jesus' revolution is good for everybody. It's good for everybody. Point to ponder. At the end, when you face God, perhaps he will ask, how well did you love? Verse to live by, Luke 23, verse 46. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Question to consider, what are you laying down your life for? Prayer, Jesus, teach me to love with abandon. Chapter 21, final chapter, the main event. It's entitled The Main Event, and this deals, of course, with the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Matthew Kelly said that is the main event. You cannot ignore the resurrection. He tells this great story of Lee Strobel. I don't know if I ever heard of him before. Legal editor for the Chicago Tribune. He and his wife were atheists. She was an agnostic, and she announces one day that she's no longer an agnostic. She's a Christian, and he's beside himself with rage. Cannot believe it, because he's an inveterate atheist. So, legal editor for Chicago Tribune, the newspaper, he decides he's going to prove the resurrection wrong. And you read the story. Great story. I'm going to tell this story from the pulpit someday. And he just does an investigation, I guess, following legal criteria into the resurrection to prove it wrong. To prove it wrong. And just comes out the other side. It comes out as a Christian. And he also converts to Christianity. And it kind of makes sense in a way, and I've talked about this too from the pulpit. Why would these 12 guys, Matthias replaced Judas, why would these 12 guys go to their deaths rather than back off from the resurrection and fate? Facing death, and all the other hundreds and thousands of Christians who said, basically, in so many words, we're not backing down on this. We don't care what you do to us. Do anything you want. We saw him risen from the dead. We saw him. And we are so happy. We are so happy about this. We are overjoyed. And as a matter of fact, we want this for you too, our enemies. We want this for you too. And we're not going to back down. You cannot shut us up about this because it's true. It really happened. We saw him. We saw him risen from the dead. Now what? I say one person, maybe two people might do that, some sort of schizophrenic psychopathology, but tens of thousands throughout, thousands anyway, the first generation of Christianity. Many, besides 12 apostles, saw Christ risen from the dead, not just the 12 apostles, but others as well. And they said, we're not backing down. We're not backing down off. And that's what Lee Strobel discovered as he looked into it. Notions of group, mass hysteria just don't wash. They're not credible. So this is it. The main event. Matthew Kelly says we are on solid ground. Now, we didn't see him risen from the dead, but we are standing on the shoulders of that testimony of those who did. The next generation said, well, I didn't, but my uncle did, and I sat at the feet of my uncle. And he talked about this, and he saw Jesus Christ risen from the dead. In the third generation, well, my great uncle, I didn't, but my great aunt did. And I remember her talking. I was just 5 years old when she died, but I remember her talking about this, and then it goes down the line. But we're standing on the shoulders of that earlier testimony. Point to ponder. God wants to resurrect you in some specific way. What a great thought. Jesus Christ risen from the dead, we can resurrect. We will resurrect literally, but also aspects of our lives, that are dead or struggling or wounded can be resurrected. Verse to live by, Mark chapter 16, verse 6. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth. He is risen. He is not here, unquote. Question to consider. What area of your life needs resurrection right now? Prayer. Jesus, unleash the power of your resurrection. Resurrect the area of my life that most needs it today. Thanks, Lars.